Good health to you.
I'm interested in your services.
So what are you interested in?
A bit of everything. Heal my wounds, have a proper bath. Oh, and my garments are in need of laundering.
I'm sure you'll be extremely satisfied.
God be with you.
Yeah. Monsignor, I've heard of various irregularities in the province that might be of interest to you.
Very good, my son. The good Christians certainly shouldn't conceal such things. Please, speak.
The former parish priest of Rovna, Father Simon, went missing one day. Everyone thought he'd fled from the province, but in fact he just went to the woods and became a hermit.
I see. Why did he do that?
Because he got some girl pregnant. The child died during birth, though, and the mother too. He took it to be retribution for his sin. So he fled far from people, because he didn't feel fit to be their pastor anymore.
That's very interesting indeed. Where is this Father Simon now?
I tracked him down in the woods and talked him into going back to Rovna. They needed a parish priest there, and Simon was convinced taking on the task would make amends for his sin.
Interesting. Father Simon's story is certainly remarkable. Whether his actions are appropriate for a cleric is another matter, of course. Thank you for telling me about this.
There were Valdensians hiding in Ujits.
Really? And how did you find out about it?
Sir Hanush sent me to help the vicar track them down and catch them.
So, Sir Hanush had an interest in finding them?
Yes, that's right.
I'm pleased to hear it. It's not always possible to see eye to eye with secular lords in such matters. And how did it end up with the members of the sect?
They fled. The vicar is still trying to track them down.
That's unfortunate. Let's hope the vicar succeeds promptly in his mission.
Some women in Ujits went to the herbalist for magic ointment. Then they went to the woods, smeared this ointment on themselves, and engaged in all sorts of incantations and spells.
What? Witchcraft? God have mercy. They must be brought to justice. Who is this herbalist they visited?
Not to worry, Monsignor. Father Godwin put a stop to it.
Well, that's good news at least. Witchcraft will not be tolerated under any circumstances.
A demon's skull was found on the church building site.
Yes. I heard something about it. A disturbing report. Tell me what you know about it.
It was a deception, sir. Someone made it with evil intentions, to frighten people. I found the skull and brought it to the local knacker. He confirmed it was a human skull with animal horns stuck on.
You did the right thing, Henry, in uncovering the deception and in telling me about it.
There are interesting things going on inside the monastery.
In the monastery? What kind of things?
Oh, various things that people are talking about. There's a lot of talk about the construction of the new church and how much it must be costing. But actually, nothing that would interest you, really. I won't waste your time with it.
As you wish.
That's all, Monsignor.
All right, Henry. Thank you. But I hope you're not keeping anything from me.
Why did you have Johanka imprisoned?
I talked to her for a long time about the things she was saying and about her convictions. I warned her that she had to stop preaching in public. And I told her if she had any further concerns, or, as she claims, visions, she should come to me. Johanka chose to ignore my warning and continued with her preaching. Obviously, I couldn't turn a blind eye to that kind of disobedience.
But what's so bad about what Johanka has been saying?
Look here. It's simply unacceptable that anyone at all should come along and stand up in the market square and preach about God's will or how he or she interprets it. God gave us his teachings, which we must honor, and he showed us how to fulfill them. It is only those teachings that lead us on the path to salvation and God's grace. But understanding those teachings is no simple matter. It demands learning, time, and effort. That is one of the tasks of Holy Mother Church. What Johanka has been saying is dangerously close to heresy. She must be brought to see the error of her ways, and her disruptive actions must cease.
But Johanka hasn't done anything against God. On the contrary, she's devout, and she's trying to redeem sinners.
Perhaps, but she's also incited disobedience to the nobles, and that is a serious accusation. Think of it like this. You have to pass through a dark forest filled with hazards. Many paths lead to that forest, but only one will lead you safely through it. You know which is the right path, but others don't. Would you show them the right path, or leave each to choose his own and very likely lose his way?
I'd lead them along the right path.
Of course. And surely you understand that the Holy Church is the one that knows that right path. And it is our duty to ensure that everyone should follow it and not stray from it.
But that's just what Johanka was doing. Trying to show people the right path.
And what makes you so convinced the path was the right one?
The Virgin Mary told her.
We only have her word for that. And even if her visions were real, she was at fault for interpreting them as she saw fit and preaching to the people.
So you think she should have spoken to the parish priest about it?
Exactly. And the priest would have sent for someone who would look into the matter. Like me, for instance. In short, it's not for her to interpret such things in her own way. If people believed her and started thinking what they want about it, soon everyone would be adrift in confusion, and the true message would be lost.
Aha. I think I understand.
I'm glad you do, my son.
But Johanka was visited by the Virgin Mary, so what she says can't be wrong.
We only have her word for that, and even if her visions were real, she was at fault for interpreting them as she saw fit and preaching to the people.
But how, if the Virgin Mary told her?
As it says in Galatians, "But though we, or an angel from heaven, preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed."
I think I understand.
Good.
Monsignor, Johanka is just a simple village girl from Scallis. Are all these legal proceedings really necessary?
They are. The mission of the Inquisition is quite unequivocal, and however trivial, this matter has a broader significance.
What broader significance?
No offense, but these things can't easily be explained to an uneducated boy like you. Still, I'm pleased that you take an interest. Unfortunately, I don't have time for this now. If you really want to know more, ask my assistant. After all, it is also our duty to guide others through the labyrinth of this world.
Monsignor, it occurs to me that maybe this situation with Johanka could be resolved in a different way.
Is that so? Pray, enlighten me.
I want to defend Johanka in a duel. If God is willing, and I win, then Johanka will be cleared.
And who do you propose to fight? Me? Or the Archangel Gabriel?
How should I know? With someone. Let God decide.
Solving disputes by such barbaric means is a throwback to ancient pagan times, and the Holy Church will not tolerate it. It is an offense to God to demand that he resolve disputes that it is our duty to resolve. No, Henry, it's out of the question. I don't want to hear another word about it. Take care.
I'm honored that you should come to me.
The bishop told me this business with Johanka has a wider context, and that you tell me about it.
Oh, very well. If the bishop says so. Look, it's like this. The world as a whole is not in a good state. For decades, people have been perishing from a terrible sickness, the Black Death. There's an anti-pope in Avignon in France who defies the authority of the throne of St. Peter. The people are frightened, Many of the nobles, instead of caring for peace on earth, are warring, one against another. The authority of many monarchs, and even the emperor, is unfortunately too weak to put things to rights. Many scholars have even started to question established truths, and various contentious teachings have appeared, such as those of the Englishman, Wycliffe.
The Black Death?
The plague, my child. A dreadful disease that claimed countless lives. By the grace of God, these parts were not much afflicted, but it took a terrible toll in the surrounding countries. First, the Italian ports were stricken, Venice and Genoa, and then nearly the whole of Christendom. Some regard it as God's punishment for our sins, or even a sign of the approaching parousia.
Paro what?
The parousia, the second coming of Christ. The day when he returns to this world will mark the end of the ages. The dead will rise, and all people will face final judgment for their sins.
Oh. Do you think that's going to happen?
Most assuredly. But God alone knows when that will be.
Oh. I hope it won't be too soon. The Black Death?
The plague, my child. First, some regard...
That's awful. I don't want to hear any more about it. The anti-pope?
Unfortunately, that's a very serious and unpleasant topic. In short, alongside the legitimate pope, the Bishop of Rome, and successor to St. Peter, another was elected, and is usurping the highest glory of being Christ's representative here on earth. This is a most lamentable schism for the whole church, and the Avignon usurper must be compelled to give up his unlawfully acquired office, so the church and the whole of Christendom may again be unified.
So, there are two popes?
Not quite. There is only one, but there are those who refuse to recognize him. The election wasn't correct and valid, and I apologize. It wasn't wise to speak to you of this. It will only confuse you, all the more. Better forget it. We won't talk about it anymore.
You mentioned the Emperor.
God wants unity, a universal order of the world. The Pope, Christ's deputy, and the Emperor, the supreme earthly ruler, crowned by the Pope himself, were instituted in order to preside over that unity. Unfortunately, the gleam of the imperial crown has become somewhat dulled, and his authority is no longer as absolute as it once was. What's worse, his election has become a political game involving many princes, and for a long time, the emperor himself has paid less attention to the affairs of the Christian world and more to his own concerns.
I see. You mentioned the Emperor.
God wants unity, a universal order of the world. The Pope, Christ's deputy, and the Emperor, the supreme earthly ruler, crowned by the Pope himself, were instituted in order to preside over that unity. Unfortunately, the gleam of the imperial crown has become somewhat dulled, and his authority is no longer as absolute as it once was. What's worse, his election has become a political game involving many princes, and for a long time, the emperor himself has paid less attention to the affairs of the Christian world and more to his own concerns.
I see. And what about these scholars?
That's complicated. Some reject the authority of the Pope or the Church. Others dispute over the legitimacy of government or the nature of the world. Others rebel against teachings. All of them seek all sorts of arguments and explanations to support their claims and argue with others. All this contributes to uncertainty. One doubt leads to another, and soon heretical ideas take hold.
Ah. Uh-huh.
But don't concern yourself. These are weighty matters for others who are learned in such things.
Of course. Peace on earth?
Yes. Sadly, many countries are torn apart by strife and destroyed by war. In the lands of the English, the French, the Italians, in the Holy Roman Empire, Christians are raising their weapons against other Christians. Love for our neighbor has given way to the pursuit of mammon and high office. They plot against each other to gain advantage. You've seen it yourself, right here in Bohemia, and even in Sasau.
Yes. And in Skalitz.
Indeed, my son. Regrettably.
But what does all this mean? What has it got to do with Johanka?
As I say, the order of the world is shaken. Division is spreading, and confusion and iniquity thrive. It's the handiwork of Lucifer, who wants to lay waste to God's creation. Many have succumbed to his false truths and spread them to others. That's why we must be alert to his snares, especially in these times. Be wary of false prophets and stick to the path of the true faith and personal virtue.
I know someone like that. There's this charlatan who's been peddling wares around these parts. All sorts of amulets, relics and the likes that are supposed to cure all ills.
Yes, I've heard something about that. If you should know of any similar iniquities, the Monseigneur will be glad to listen to you.
And Johanka?
Just so. I fear she too may have been ensnared by Lucifer's deceptions, and the false belief that she's been visited by the Blessed Virgin. These machinations of the devil must be faced and stamped out before they take root and cause more evil. But we must not despair. Even those who have strayed from the right path may be redeemed. And that's why Johanka's case is important, although it may not be immediately apparent.
I understand. Thanks. I won't bother you anymore. Could you please tell me more about those scholarly things you mentioned?
Certainly. Ask away.
Peace on earth?
Yes. Sadly, many countries are torn apart by strife and destroyed by war. In the lands of the English, the French, the Italians, in the Holy Roman Empire, Christians are raising their weapons against other Christians. Love for our neighbor has given way to the pursuit of mammon and high office. They plot against each other to gain advantage. You've seen it yourself, right here in Bohemia, and even in Sasau.
Yes. And in Skalitz.
Indeed, my son. Regrettably.
Thanks. I won't bother you anymore.
Good luck, then.